Let's see who are the real children of Israel that are the rightful owners of the Promised Land. From the 1st century CE to the 20th century CE, there are broadly two categories of Jews. The first category of Jews are those who continuously stayed in Canaan and willingly accepted Prophet Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, and the message of the New Testament given by God to him. They also willingly accepted the final message, the Quran, given by God to Prophet Muhammed, peace be upon him. The second category of Jews includes those who wandered in different parts of the world during the Diaspora. They rejected both the New Testament given to Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, and the final testament given to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Who are the real children of Israel? Is it the first category who retained their presence in Canaan and kept their faith in God by accepting all messages of God? Or is it the second category who rejected the last two messages of God given to the last two messengers of God, peace be upon them? The most important verse which has the sign is Numbers chapter 33, verses 50 to 56. In these verses, God said to Moses to ask the children of Israel to enter Canaan and drive out the idol worshippers, destroy their idols, and destroy the temples. There are two important points to be focused on. First, Canaan is promised to the children of Israel, and second, idol worshippers are to be driven out and idols are to be destroyed. Today, Jews of Israel are driving out Palestinian Muslims, but the Palestinian Muslims are not idol worshippers. This is the first sign of the Torah, that the Palestinian Muslims are not to be driven out. Before we dive into the details, let's first take a look at the video's outline. It all begins around the 20th century BCE, when God made a powerful promise to Abraham, the land of Canaan, now known as Palestine. This promise was passed down through Abraham's son Isaac, then to Isaac's son Israel, and finally to Israel's 12 sons, who were called the children of Israel. These 12 sons formed 12 tribes, out of which 10 tribes resided in the northern part of the kingdom, and 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin resided in the southern part of the kingdom. In the 8th century BCE, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom were lost during the Assyrian exile, and are now commonly known as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now only 2 tribes remained as children of Israel. By the 6th century BCE, they were no longer identified as children of Israel, but were rather identified as children of Judah, that is, Jews. Judaism was not from God, but a new term coined in the 6th century BCE. That's why the Quran says in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, chapter 62, verse 6,
يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ هَادُوا,
which means, O you who have become Judaized, or O you who have turned into Jews, instead of saying, O you Jews. In the 1st century CE, Jesus came with the New Testament. Then some Jews rejected Jesus Christ and remained Jews, while others accepted the message of God, out of which some identified themselves as Christians. Christianity is also not from God, but a new term coined in 44 to 45 CE in Acts 11:26, where followers of Jesus are called Christians by foreigners in Antioch to distinguish the followers of Jesus from Jews. By 135 CE, Jews were forced by the Romans to leave Canaan and migrate to Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, which is known as the Jewish Diaspora. However, some Jews and Christians remained in Canaan. In the 7th century, God sent his final message to Prophet Muhammed, a descendant of Abraham, in Makkah. When this message reached the land of Canaan, some Jews and Christians accepted it. Until the 20th century, the descendants of Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived in the land of Canaan. Over time, Jews from various parts of the world began returning to Canaan, now known as Palestine, to reclaim the Promised Land. Let's see who are the real children of Israel that are the rightful owners of the Promised Land. The Jews who were driven out of Canaan over 2,000 years ago and later returned to present-day Palestine may have undergone intermarriage during their diaspora, meaning they are not entirely biologically descended from the ancient Israelites. Arab Muslims who are descendants of Ishmael and Abraham are spiritual children of Israel because, according to the Quran, spiritual lineage takes precedence over biological descent. This is illustrated in the story of Prophet Noah and his son, who, despite being Noah's biological child, was not part of his spiritual legacy because he rejected faith as mentioned in Quran 1146. Palestinian Muslims are both spiritual and biological children of Israel, spiritually through their faith and biologically through their continued presence in the land of Canaan. Palestinian Jews and Christians are the biological children of Israel, as they are the direct offspring of those who remained in Canaan continuously. Now let's look at the religion of Abraham and all his children. Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Christian, because the children of Judah invented the religion of Judaism much later in the 6th century BCE, and Jesus Christ came into existence much later in the 1st century CE. Nowhere in the Old Testament is the specific religion of Abraham mentioned. The Quran mentions that Abraham was a Muslim in Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 67, which states Abraham was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but he was a true Muslim, and he was not of the polytheists. The Quran mentions that Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Israel, all the children of Israel, Moses, and Jesus were Muslims in Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 84. All prophets were obedient to God, so technically all were Muslims. Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 19 says, "Indeed, the religion in the sight of Allah is Islam." Since Judaism is not a formal religion, the Quran says in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, chapter 62, verse 6,
يا أيها الذين هادوا
which means, O you who have become Judaized, or O you who have turned into Jews. The terms Judaism and Christianity do not appear in the Old Testament or New Testament.
God showed 3 signs in the Torah, Injil, and Quran that the Palestine land belongs to the Palestinian Muslims and not to the Israeli Jews.
Let's carefully see the verses of Torah where God promises the land of Canaan to the descendants of Abraham through his son Isaac, and Isaac's son Jacob, who is later named Israel. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 8, God promises to Abraham, "And I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the whole land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession."
Here the important phrase to be noted is, children of Abraham.
God reiterated the promise to Isaac in Genesis chapter 26, verses 2 to 5, and to Israel in Genesis chapter 28, verses 13 to 15. In all these verses, God talks about the promised land to them and to their children. Ultimately, the promise was for the children of Israel. The most important verse which has the sign is Numbers chapter 33, verses 50 to 56. In these verses, God said to Moses to ask the children of Israel to enter Canaan and drive out the idol worshippers, destroy their idols, and destroy the temples. There are 2 important points to be focused on. First, Canaan is promised to the children of Israel, and second, idol worshippers are to be driven out and idols are to be destroyed. Today, Jews of Israel are driving out Palestinian Muslims, but the Palestinian Muslims are not idol worshippers. This is the first sign of the Torah, that the Palestinian Muslims are not to be driven out.
Now the second point is that the children of Israel are the rightful owners of the promised land of Canaan, which is present-day Palestine. Now 2 questions arise about the children of Israel. Does it refer to the spiritual children of Israel or the biological children of Israel? The Quran says that the true spiritual children of Israel are Muslims. The Quran teaches that the true sons of the prophets are those who follow the faith and believe in God's message, rather than those who merely share their genetic lineage.
This concept is exemplified in the story of Prophet Noah and his son. Quran chapter 11 verse 46 says, "And Noah called to his son, who was at a distance, 'O my son, come aboard with us and be not with the disbelievers.' But he said, 'I will take refuge on a mountain to protect me from the water.' Noah said, 'There is no protector today from the command of Allah except for whom he has mercy.' And the waves came between them, and he was among the drowned." Despite being Noah's biological son, this son was not considered to be truly part of Noah's spiritual legacy because he rejected faith. This story illustrates a fundamental Quranic principle. Faith and obedience to God define the true spiritual relationship, not mere biological descent. This teaching is reinforced in many other parts of the Quran. The Palestinian Muslims believe in true God and believe in both Prophet Muhammed and Prophet Jesus, peace be upon them, while Jews rejected both. This is the second sign that the Palestine Muslims, being the true spiritual children of Israel, deserve the Palestine land more than the Jews. Now let's consider the biological children of Israel. For this, we have to trace the children of Israel from the 10th century BCE to the present 21st century. There were 12 children of Israel who formed 12 tribes. Out of these, 10 tribes resided in the northern part of the kingdom called the Kingdom of Israel, or the Northern Kingdom. And 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, resided in the southern part of the kingdom called the Kingdom of Judah, or the Southern Kingdom. In the 8th century BCE, the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, and the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom were dispersed toward the east and were lost to history. This is called the Assyrian exile. These tribes are often referred to as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now only 2 tribes remained as children of Israel. In the 6th century BCE, the 2 tribes of the southern kingdom were taken into exile in Babylon, which is in modern-day Iraq. This event is known as the Babylonian exile. After 70 years, the 2 tribes returned to Judah, but tribal distinctions were gradually lost. Instead, they were referred to as the Jews, an identity derived from the tribe of Judah. So by the 6th century CE, the only children of Israel left were from the tribe of Judah. Now let's see how long this lineage continued and into which parts of the world they spread. By the 1st century CE, Jews were forced by the Romans to leave Canaan. Many Jews migrated to different parts of the Mediterranean world, including Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. From the 1st century to the 20th century, there were 2 groups of Jews. The first category of Jews are those who stayed in Canaan. Some of these Jews accepted the final testament of God, the Quran, and converted to Islam after the advent of the Arabs in the 7th century CE. The second category includes those who wandered in different parts of the world. While wandering, they generally maintained strong religious and cultural boundaries that discouraged intermarriage. However, there were still instances and periods when intermarriage occurred. In the 20th century, after nearly 2,000 years of exile, the second category of Jews started returning to Palestine to restore Israel. Now let's see whether the first category of Jews who stayed in Palestine and retained their faith in God by accepting the final message of God are the real children of Israel, or whether the second category of Jews who returned with a probable mixed culture can be called as the children of Israel. The Palestinian Muslims include those Christians and Jews who retained their faith in Islam by accepting the final message of God and continued living in Palestine till today. So the Palestinian Muslims have more right to be called the children of Israel. So in conclusion, we have seen 3 signs in the Torah and the final message that Palestinian Muslims deserve the land of Palestine. The first sign is that Palestinian Muslims are not idol worshippers. So Numbers 33:50 to 56, which say, to drive out the idol worshippers from Palestine, do not fit for Palestinian Muslims. The second sign is that Palestinian Muslims retained their faith in God by accepting the final message of God and deserve to be called true spiritual children of Israel. The third sign is that Palestinian Muslims include Jews and Christians who were true biological children of Israel, who continued living in Palestine and who accepted Islam deserve to be called true biological children of Israel as compared to Jews who wandered in the whole world and returned to Palestine in the 20th century with probable intermarriage instances. Judaism as a formal religious identity developed after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, when Jewish leaders systematized beliefs and practices. Similarly, the term Christianity emerged later as a distinct religious identity. The term Christian, Greek Christianos, first appears in Acts 11:26, where followers of Jesus are called Christians by others in Antioch. It was not a term the early Christians used for themselves, but was used by outsiders. The term is also mentioned in Acts 26:28, where King Agrippa refers to Paul as a Christian, showing how the label was adopted by non-believers. Both the Old Testament and New Testament suggest that Abraham and Jesus were, in essence, Muslim, as they both fully submitted to God's will. While Islam is commonly understood as a proper noun referring to the religion, it also functions as a common noun meaning total obedience or total submission to God's will. In the Old Testament Hebrew Bible, the concept of Abraham's submission to God is evident in several passages, including Genesis 12:1. The New Testament similarly affirms that Jesus was a Muslim in the sense that he submitted to God's will. In John 5:30, Jesus states that he follows the will of God, and in John 6:38, he affirms that he came to do God's will.